This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Welcome into the Monday Mashup on a Monday, August 27th. When you're listening to it right now, it's, we're about an hour out of August 27th, about 11:15. I had a long day today. Of course, I'm your host, Shea Norling. Joining me shortly will be my co-host, Tanner Seltzer. Long day. Started off, went down to Comerica Park, checked out the Tigers game. Of course, it was Alan Trammell's number retirement. It was a very special ceremony. A lot of great speakers. Lou Whitaker stood up and spoke. Kirk Gibson spoke. Dan Dickerson emceed the entire affair. And Alan Trammell came up, looked great for his age, spoke great for his age. I mean, honestly, he looked like he could have played shortstop. He could have walked out and done as well of a job as the Tigers. Maybe not as well as Jose Iglesias, but man, he looks like he could still field middle infield at least as well as the Tigers did. And after that, went down with my fiance and my parents. We went and checked out Wicked at the Michigan Opera House. And just now getting home from that, sitting down to take care of business and take care of the podcast. It was a great show. And it was a really good ending to what would have been just a wonderful day, if not for the cloud that was kind of cast over it. About halfway through the Tigers game, when I went through my Twitter feed, and I saw a clip on Twitch.com, which is, for those of you who are not aware, a video game streaming service. And the clip was very graphic. It was from the Madden tournament in Jacksonville, Florida. It was Joe Rice and True Boy playing a match in single elimination in the Madden Satellite Tournament for the Madden Championship. And it was interrupted by gunfire. And I don't know, I haven't heard anything regarding Joe Rice. True Boy passed away. A couple other players, Spot Me, passed away. There were, at last look, I think 11 dead and a few other victims. By all accounts, it was possibly two shooters, and one of them committed murder-suicide. And Tanner and I both play a lot of Madden, and it's kind of like this one especially. And obviously all of the mass shootings that have happened in the past couple years are just horrible and unacceptable, and we shouldn't have to live like this. We shouldn't have to live in fear. You know, I went to the Tigers game, and then I went to the play today. It's two events where you walk in, and whether you think it or not, you're looking for exit points, and you're making sure you're aware in case something happens. It's not a way to live. It's not a way to go to a baseball game and enjoy a baseball game, or go to a play and enjoy a play. And it's sure as hell not a way. These guys were just trying to make a little money, have some fun, play Madden, and they lost their lives. This one hits so close to home for me because, and it's like I've said a few times on this podcast, whether or not it should be political, it will become political. And sports and politics, and now video games, just keep running into each other like we've never seen before. And this one feels so close to home because, like I said, Tanner and I both play a lot of Madden. I'm a huge fan of the game. And it feels like this is really our community that got hit today. And how easily that could have been us. And it makes you think. And the other thing it makes me think is just, how many times are we going to go through this? How many times am I going to have to open my phone and see 10 dead at a school, or 10 dead at church, or at a mall, or at a gay club in Orlando, or at a regular club, or just wherever you go? Yeah, I saw a tweet today that somebody put out, every time that they're in church, they make sure that they're aware of the exit points. Every time. Because they know how easy it would be for someone to come through the back of the church, up the aisle, and no one would be any the wiser. And to think that that is the way that we should be living our lives is insane. That we should be living in our fears. Because for some reason, people can't let go of guns. I was on my Twitter feed shortly after a mass shooting at something as innocent as commonplace as a video game tournament. And there were people putting out tweets that said, "Don't touch my guns." Is that really the side of history that we want to be on in this country? And then you hold on to this idea that these founding fathers and these guys who lived 250 years ago wrote up these ideas. And yeah, a lot of them were really great. But we can admit that they made mistakes in their belief that women shouldn't be allowed to vote or hold office or do much of anything. We admit that they made mistakes in thinking that black people should be property. And those are okay for us to go, look, these guys were brilliant, but they got those things wrong. How is it so difficult for us to look at the Second Amendment and go, man, maybe they kind of messed this one up? Or even more realistically, maybe this isn't how they ever thought it would be interpreted. But the don't touch my gun crowd is just, it's astonishing. I understand that there are good gun owners, responsible gun owners. But how many times do we have to see people leaving video game tournaments or church or school or a shopping trip, a night out, and they come home in boxes? And we sit here and we go, not my guns. Don't you dare come for my guns. At what point can we just accept that maybe this is the problem? And maybe we don't need to take guns away. I've never prescribed to that thought, but there's no reason why it should be as easy to get them as it is. There's no reason why it shouldn't be among the most difficult things for a person to do in this country. There's no reason why anyone that's a responsible gun owner should have any problem with more regulations to getting guns. There's no reason. I don't want to hear the self-defense thing. I could just point you in the direction of a Jim Jeffries bit that it eviscerates that argument. It's astonishing to me the crowd can continue to come out and make this a political weapon. Like, what are we talking about? This isn't politics. This is human life. And we're losing it at an astonishing rate and in the simplest of places. A video game tournament. One that Tanner or I could easily have been in attendance. In fact, Tanner, you are what, 10 minutes away from the venue?
Yeah, exactly. And like the shooting hits close to home in multiple ways, and that being one of them. That tournament literally is 10, 15 minutes max away from my house. I could be there. And in another way, since 2007, I've been attending tournaments just like that. Like, me and my good friend, like we've probably attended, I want to say 10 maybe tournaments just like that, and maybe on a smaller scale, but it's still the same thing. And it's just disheartening. Like, I've been following the Madden scene for years and years now, and these are faces that you recognize, names people I may have met in previous tournaments across the country, here and there, whatever. And it's just disgusting. Shea and I had been talking about, like, when they first announced that tournament, actually, we talked about going to it. We were like, I was like, yo, you guys could come down here and you could just go and have fun. It'll be great. And then, things happened. I couldn't get it off work. It's kind of unrealistic for Shea and our friend of ours to fly down to Jacksonville for a tournament. It's just, we threw it around. We were joking around. Let's go to this tournament. But the thing is, like, and I don't want to make this about myself, because it is not about myself at all. I'm just showing you how crazy and small this world is on such a big event like this. And I just literally, like, a week and a half ago, I was sitting there on my phone trying to figure out a way I can get time off work to go to that event. I literally contemplated going to this event to play Madden with these people. And it's mind blowing to think about. Like, I ended up working today. So I was not there. I was not anywhere near the shooting, thankfully. But it's mind blowing to me. These are kids, some of the people there, they were, 16 years old, probably, maybe younger. And, and then much older people as well, adults, 25, 26 years old. So it's just, I'm at a loss for words today, Shea. It's a very sombering, very sad mood. Like you said, there was a cloud over my head. The moment I walked out of work, like, there was a cloud over my head the rest of the day. And, my heart goes out to all those affected by that.
Yeah. It just is extra. It's extra close because, like you said, These are guys that at one time or another we may have played against. These are guys that you may have seen at a tournament, or that we may have unknowingly shared a chat room or a Discord server or whatever with. Like, these are people that have interacted with plenty of gamers. And it's a community now that I fear is going to come under fire, because there are already those who come out and say the reason all these shootings are happening is because kids are desensitized to violence playing games like Grand Theft Auto, and now there's a toxic culture formed in the shit talking and everything that goes with playing online sports video games, and video games are the reason that this is happening. See, it happened at a video game tournament. Can't you see now? And the whole community now is going to come under fire, and it's a community that, honestly, you and I have made friends through video games. I know this. Like,
of course.
It's a community that, yeah, at times there's a 12-year-old kid who doesn't know any better that's shouting the N-word into a headset at a bunch of people in a Call of Duty lobby. And at times there's somebody who will call my mother an expletive in a message because they're not happy that they lost a game of Madden. But at other times it's a community that lifts one another up. And you look at guys like Spot Me, who lost his life today playing Madden, supports his family through this community, who built a Twitch following, who built a stream following, and through his talent at the game and his personality, fed his family by doing this. It's a group of people who, even if you aren't actively the gamer, maybe you engage with them by watching their streams. And it's just, these people bring joy to other people's lives. And yeah, the shit talking is gross sometimes, but it's really all it is. And you know what? To bring an entire community of people under fire, many of whom are very wholesome individuals, most of whom, I would say, and to say it's video games that are creating a toxic culture for kids, it's just insane. And to me, they say that the guy that shot up the event was competing and he had lost, and that's why it happened. To me, and I'm not an expert, but if you walk into an event with a gun that is equipped with a laser sight and you are ready to take your own life, this wasn't just some spur-of-the-moment act because he lost a game of Madden. This was somebody who was struggling to begin with. And the end concern for me is they never should have had access to a gun. And if you disagree with that at this point, I don't know what leg you have left to stand on. I don't know what platform you're preaching from. If you think that it's right that gun purchases should be this easy and that we should not have further regulations, I just don't think you're paying any attention. People lost their lives at a video game tournament. Yeah.
And the people that try to politicize, not politicize, they try to deflect, they try to make it not about the guns, they make it about, what's a video game event? These people are crazy, or, something like that. It's just, you have to point to the main issue, which is the guns. And, like you said earlier, I don't think a ban on guns is doable, or I don't even want that, honestly. I think there needs to be stricter regulations on whatever, like background checks, this and that. Something has to change. And I hate, I feel like I say this once a month, Shea. I really do. It's disgusting that I have to do this once a month, I remember we did this on our other podcast. We did the exact same thing. I was sitting here saying the exact same thing, and it sickens me that, I have to do this again. And when it's this close to home for me in multiple ways. And, I don't know. I don't have much else to say on it. It's just a very sad day for me and the nation.
And you're right. It's week in, week out. It's another one. And, I don't think it's difficult. I don't think that we have to go knocking on doors and saying, hand over your weapons. I think if you want to get a gun, there needs to be background checks. There needs to be licensure. There needs to be registration information for your guns and for your ammunition. You need to pass tests that show you know how to properly store and clean and fire, and you know the laws about it. And you need to continue to pass those tests and renew your certifications. And you should have character witnesses that say, I know this guy very well, and I'm talking about multiple, not just one dude that you pay $20 to go walk in and say, yeah, he's cool. No, you need multiple character references with proven relationships to you that can go in and say he is capable of owning a weapon. And to me, that's not difficult. It's not a difficult thing to implement. But this current state where every state gets to decide for themselves, and there's states like Nevada, I think, that have laws so lax for third-party gun sales. And it's astonishing that even today, like, how many times does this need to happen? How many more of these do we need to experience before we just stop and say, look, let's do something? Because I, for one, can't wait for the next 5 days of talking heads debating this on CNN and Fox News and MSNBC and whatever other news channel you want to watch. Then I can't wait for the government to come out and pretend like they care about the lost lives so much while they continue to do nothing to change the problem. I'm done with it. It's just, we shouldn't have to live in a world where this happens week in and week out.
I agree. I really don't have much else to say, Shea.
And I would like to move on to something a little lighter. We are putting the NFL preview on hold for a week. We will revisit it next week with the finale of the NFL preview. I think we have one division left to talk about.
I think we have two.
Maybe two. We'll have to fact check that.
Jam them in if we have to.
Yeah, we'll have to fact check that. And we're going to do, we're going to pick an MVP, we're going to pick a Rookie of the Year, and we're going to pick Super Bowl champions. Maybe a couple other things we'll talk about during the week, and we'll throw that in. But today, what we wanted to do, in honor of college football starting last night, I think New Mexico State and Wyoming played, and
Woo.
UMass and Duquesne, and UMass went and just put a beating on Duquesne. Two games that nationally don't get a whole lot of traction, but this week fills up the board with games that are going to get a lot of national attraction, and we need to do a little bit of a preview before the college football season kicks off so that we can't be accused of cheating and picking late. So we are going to go through, we're going to give you Big Ten championship picks. We're going to give you Heisman picks. We are going to give you each of our bracket for the college football playoff, our top 4 teams, and we're going to give you a national champion. And we're going to do all of that today. And I think we should go ahead and just pick. I think we both are going to be on the same page with the Michigan State-Utah State game. Michigan State's favored by 23.5. I would probably take the bet that they're going to win by 24 points. Utah State, not a very good football team, coming to visit in East Lansing on a Friday night. It's a tough game. But the interesting game this weekend is on Saturday night locally. Michigan trying to get their first road win against a ranked opponent in 12 years. Tanner,
you just had to say that, didn't you? You just had to throw that in.
Yeah, well, as the Michigan fan of the podcast, is it going to happen?
I'm going to tell you what, Shea. Yes, it is. All right. This is going to be Jim Harbaugh's first notable big win under in his regime. All right. You're going to go to South Bend, 7:30 p.m. Eastern, and take care of business. I think you got a returning defense that's just phenomenal, top to bottom. We didn't touch on this. There is news though that Tariq Black, the wide receiver out of Michigan, is out indefinitely. We don't know. He apparently injured his other opposite foot that he injured last season. So that's a little bit of a negative going into the season. You don't want to see that literally a week before. But I think this team will regroup. They still got young, great wide receiver talent that can step up and replace. Nico Collins is going to step in there. Donovan Peoples-Jones, of course. But I don't know about you, Shea, but I think Michigan wins this. I'm not going to say the score margin just because we haven't seen Shea Patterson take a single snap under center. So I just have a feeling Michigan's going to walk into South Bend and win.
I think it's a fair thought. I think this is probably the best chance they've had to go knock off a ranked opponent on the road in quite some time. But I also think when you start week 1 road game at night in a stadium like South Bend is, in a rivalry game with a renewed rivalry, no less, and a crowd that's going to be out of their minds. It's a tough situation to walk into. And when Shea Patterson has put the numbers up against top 30 defenses that he has, for those who aren't aware, I think 4 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, below 60% completion percentage. That's an overrated stat.
That was for last season only. Don't get it twisted.
That's fair.
People.
That's fair. But it's iffy passer ratings. I just haven't seen enough. I haven't seen enough to say that Shea Patterson's going to walk into hostile territory in Notre Dame, in South Bend, at night in week 1 in a renewed rivalry matchup and play to win. But I also have to say, this is close of a matchup as we've seen, and the odds show that. Notre Dame is currently a 1-point favorite. So this is not going to be some type of blowout either way to me. This is a game that's going to be kind of, I'm expecting anyway, a smash mouth style of football. Two really good defenses, 2 really good running football teams. I think that this is going to be that smash mouth style of football. But at the end of the day, and I'm not doing it as a Michigan State fan, to me, if it's week 1, if it's a night game and it's not at a neutral site, I got to take the home team. And that's just the safe bet for me. I don't really like Notre Dame's coaching staff. I think that their talent might be a little overrated. I think they had a nice run last year, but a few guys left. And I think Michigan probably on paper is more talented, but I think when you bring a team into this rivalry with players that haven't experienced it and you ask them to go in their first game of the season and win at South Bend at night, you're asking a lot.
And maybe this is also the flip side of this is last year they went to a neutral game site and, people seem to forget that, and played an SEC team in Florida. And, they looked good. They looked really good in their first game of the season. Their defense looked amazing from top to bottom, and that carried through for the rest of the season for the most part. And, when you return 9 of 11 starters, you got to be pretty confident. And for those who haven't seen, Michigan hired Arkansas's strength and conditioning coach, and the transformation a lot of these players have made as far as their muscle mass is going is insane. Like, they've gained like 15 pounds of muscle over a 4-month span. If you can see those pictures on Twitter, if you have the capability, I would definitely go check it out because it's actually kind of mind blowing to look at. But I got to go with a team that has a proven defense, and if they had a 25% extra working quarterback last year, they probably win a couple more games. Let's be honest.
Well, and I don't even want to come out and just blame the quarterback. Like, I know Michigan fan.
Oh, man.
Michigan fan. No, I think I'm going to take this in a way that you might not be expecting. But Michigan fan loves to come out and say the old, we didn't have an operational quarterback last season, yada, yada, yada. What I'm most interested in looking at isn't even Shea Patterson. And it's not if another quarterback comes in, if it's Dylan McCaffrey, if it's Joe Milton, if it's Brandon Peters, whatever happens, if it happens that another quarterback gets time against Notre Dame, that won't be my most interesting look either. What I think was the best offseason acquisition for the Wolverines and the most critical thing for me to look at in this week 1 matchup against Notre Dame on the road, how does that offensive line under Ed Warner hold up? Because that was the reason you haven't had healthy quarterbacks. In this run with Harbaugh and this top 10 defense every single year, really top 5 defense every single year, the glaring weakness has been a complete inability to protect the quarterback. And that's going to be my big takeaway in this game is if that offensive line can keep Shea Patterson or Dylan McCaffrey or Joe Milton or Brandon Peters or whoever's at quarterback, because Jim Harbaugh won't tell us. If they can keep him upright, I think Michigan has a very good shot. And honestly, if that offensive line shows that they can keep a quarterback upright against a good defense on the road in a night game, that'll say a lot about the season.
Oh, yeah, of course. And I mean, just to clarify, Shea Patterson was officially named starter. That was a first in Harbaugh's career at Michigan that he's naming his starting quarterback. But you are right, though. Last year, the O-line was a big factor in why our quarterback play was spotty. I will say it was mostly with Wilton Spate at quarterback because he got hurt from the spotty O-line play. And, everyone has a complaint against John O'Korn because we literally sat there and watched him in the Ohio State game on a 4th and 7 with a wide open receiver in the middle of the field. There was no one within 10 yards of him either side. and he completely bombed it downfield and threw an interception into triple coverage. So I think that's where a lot of the disgust happens, and we saw that literally all the time last year, and that was the final straw. We were like, okay, this is just absolutely absurd. But yeah, anyway, Shea Patterson, a 5-star recruit quarterback. He has legs. He can run. He can create plays outside the pocket. And of course, like I said, we haven't seen a snap. I don't want to get ahead of myself too much, but I have to have like a little bit of faith that he's going to be better, at least better than Wilton Spate and John O'Korn. That's all I'm saying.
And that's fine. And that's fair. And I think that this game really is going to set the tone for the season for the most part.
Absolutely.
I think you go out and you win this game, and that says a lot. First of all, you go out and you win this game, it gets the monkey off your back that the past 12 years have just been filled with disappointments in big road games. If you go out and beat Notre Dame week 1, it immediately gets the monkey off your back, and you can stop. People have to stop pointing to that. They can no longer come out and say, you can't beat good opponents on the road. You just shut their mouth. So I think that sets a tone. But on the other side of the coin, if you go out and lose, you're just adding to the fire that people are already talking about. And it kind of just goes to, and I know that you can say, well, it's very recoverable. All of your goals are still in front of you because it's a non-conference opponent. It's just week 1. But it makes life very difficult. Because then if Ohio State goes undefeated, if Ohio State beats TCU without Urban Meyer and they go into conference play undefeated, and Michigan State beats Arizona State and they go into conference play undefeated, it's more pressure on Michigan because they already have that one loss hanging over them. So I think at that point it becomes win out or no playoff. And that's a big tone setter, too, because it just puts a ton of pressure on the team to go out and win every single week. Whereas if you go out and you beat Notre Dame, you're flying high. And you've also got everybody, nobody can say bad things about you anymore because you just proved them all wrong.
I mean, you're right. And, you know, I've said from the very beginning, 2 out of 3 against the rivals. Notre Dame, Michigan State, Ohio State, 2 out of 3, and Harbaugh like literally clears his name for a season. And I don't think there's any arguing that. And they have to win the game. For me, they have to win at least one of the 2 games between Wisconsin and Penn State at home. I think obviously I would love for them to win both. Maybe that's me getting overhyped and overthinking it, but just win. They just got to go out there and win games. And of course, a failure of a season is anything less than the Big Ten title for Michigan. If they do not win the Big Ten title, it is a failure of a season. I will say that now. There's no excuses, nothing. I don't want to hear, quarterback. I don't want to hear defense, no injuries, anything like that. At this point in Harbaugh's stage of his Michigan tenure, he should be competing for a Big Ten title.
I'm with you. And on that note, let's roll this right into the predictions. Are they your Big Ten champion?
Shocker here, folks. Yes, they are. I just think, even with this difficult schedule, if they can come out in that first game and just get the season rolling on a high note, they get a few weeks off, a few easier teams that will go through. I just think, you get a defense like that. You can't deny that. You really can't. And that defense will carry you. That defense travels. It goes here and there. It does great things for you. I have to ride that Don Brown, and Don Brown we trust.
And likewise, I'm going with the homer pick. And the reason why I just said I have a problem picking Michigan going to Notre Dame because I think it's a lot to ask for these players who haven't experienced that rivalry to go on the road and win that game at night. It's going to be a tough environment. And that's kind of where my pick for the Big Ten championship lies as well. I think you have 3 teams in Michigan State, and Ohio State that are within an eyelash of one another talent-wise. And I think it's very tough to argue that those 3 teams are the most talented in the Big Ten. Maybe you want to throw Wisconsin in because of their defense and because of their running game. But I always, when it comes to Wisconsin, I always think that they're elevated a little bit because they play a weaker schedule, they play in the weaker division, and they never put anyone on their non-conference listing. So I think that it's kind of difficult to argue Michigan State, and Ohio State are the cream of the Big Ten this season, and I think they're all within an eyelash of each other. And when you have 3 teams that are that much of a push, in college football, I have to take the team that gets their hardest games at home. There's a game that really scares me for Michigan State that's going on the road to Nebraska, a rejuvenated program under Scott Frost as head coach. It's a guy you have to respect. It's a team that brought in a ton of talent last offseason, and that's a game that scares me a little bit, but it's always there's an enticingness to making this pick because they do get Michigan at home. And I know that the last time Michigan came to East Lansing, that was a loss. Again, that team was 3-9. It was D'Antonio's. Look, he bounced back. That's all I'll say. I don't even want to talk about that team anymore. But I think when you play them at home, it's a place that has been a fortress for the majority of the past decade when it comes to that game. I lean that way. And when it comes to Ohio State, you can bring up that D'Antonio doesn't have a winning record or even a 500 record against Ohio State, but more than most coaches in the Big Ten can say, D'Antonio has experience beating Urban Meyer in the Big Ten championship game in Columbus a couple years ago in what was basically a Big Ten East championship game. And D'Antonio's been there, and he knows what it takes to beat that guy. And that's the guy who's going to be on the sideline for better or worse come November, whatever, when Michigan State and Ohio State meet up in East Lansing. Just again, I lean towards the home team in college football when it's this close.
And I mean, yeah, it's warranted to pick them. They have, like you said, they have two of their big rivals at home. They get Michigan at home. They get Ohio State at home. And of course, it's a solid pick. I'm not going to argue it. You could literally go, between Ohio State, Michigan, and Michigan State. They're obviously all going to be, 1, 2, 3, either way you look at it. But I do have some concerns. I look at there's some scheduling concerns here. Week 2, they go out to the West Coast to Arizona State.
That game scares me.
That's scary. I mean, yeah, any team that's traveling out to the West Coast late at night, things happen. The crazy things happen. Usually, sometimes it favors the home team. Michigan did it a couple years ago in 2015. They went out to Utah. It did not go well for them. They played their hearts out. I'll give them that, but it just did not go well. And then, 4 weeks later, they have to go on the road to Penn State. And, I don't think Penn State's going to be as good as they were last year personally, but either way, that's a tough game. So, I mean, and of course, this is just proving the Big Ten has, just immense talent top to bottom as far as teams go. And then you mentioned Nebraska too. So, obviously I have concerns, but as a Michigan fan, I can easily poke holes in this argument or try to poke holes in it as much as I want, but they're a solid team. I can't deny it.
At the end of the day, we'll find out when the games are played. Penn State, as much as it should scare me, it almost doesn't, and maybe I'm being a little cocky, but again, it's a defense in East Lansing that's returning 10 of 11 starters, and it's a defense that made Trace McSorley look a little lost when they put Saquon Barkley in a coffin for the better part of an entire game in East Lansing last season, and one of the only games he didn't get 100 yards rushing. And they managed to make Trace McSorley make plays, and he wasn't able to do that. And it's a defense that's coming back, so maybe I'm a little cocky in that regard, but Penn State doesn't terrify me this season. Moving on, just going to kind of quick fire through the rest of these picks real fast. Give me your Heisman.
I'm going to go with DeAndre Swift out of Georgia. He got a lot of even though he was behind Nick Chubb and Sony Michel, he did get a lot of touches last year just because he was really that good. The dude averaged almost 7 yards a carry, and that's just asinine. This kid was a sophomore last year, I believe. He's coming in as his junior season. That's just one guy for me that I'm looking out like, wow, this could be, the real deal.
Yeah, and that's a good pick, and he's a guy who really looked good in parts of last season. I told you I was going to go with Bryce Love. I'm changing my pick.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, Bryce Love's the easy pick. He's a guy that I love, the running back out of Stanford, but I'm changing my pick to Myles Gaskin, the running back out of Washington, who has just put up unbelievable numbers in his career at Washington. His freshman season, 1,300 yards, 14 touchdowns on the ground. His sophomore season, 1,400 yards, 10 touchdowns. A year ago, 1,400 yards, 21 touchdowns. This is a guy who has 45 rushing touchdowns in 3 seasons. He's got 4,000 yards rushing in 3 seasons, 4,400 yards from scrimmage. And he averages, in his college career, he averages 5.9 yards per carry. This guy, as a senior, he's seen everything you have to throw at him. He plays in a conference that doesn't really have great defenses anywhere. And I think that he could capitalize on that. And I think an easier schedule, a team that's very highly ranked and has a lot of skill, not only on the offensive line, but at the quarterback position and also in the receiving core. He has help. He has a scheme in place in the coaching staff that's been to a playoff. They know what it takes to win that conference. And I think that he's just going to be in a very good situation as a senior with all the experience, hefty numbers through his career. I think this is a season where he breaks off and he wins the Heisman.
That's a nice pick. I mean, I'm not a big fan of Washington, but you always see the Heisman candidate is always in a team that's in the Final Four, Shea. And I think maybe this is a good spot to transition to our Final Four picks. I'll start it off real quick. I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, list them off top to bottom. Number 1, I got Clemson. Number 2, I got Georgia. Number 3, I have that team I just mentioned, Washington. And number 4, I'm a homer. Give me Michigan. Let's see it happen. Let's see them sneak in there and get that Final Four spot. So yeah, I don't know. What do you got, Shea? I left out Bama. What do you think of that?
I don't hate it, and I'm as much as it's a homer pick that you put Michigan in. I have to say, you're not as much of a homer as Desmond Howard, who put Michigan in not only into the playoff but had them at number 1. As he does every single year when he asks for his pick, who's going to win, and Desmond Howard shamelessly picks Michigan. So at least you're not that level of homer. My top 4 is a little weird, and it's a little it's kind of ballsy that I'm picking it like this, but I'm going to go ahead and do it anyway. My number 1 is Alabama. My number 2 is Michigan State. My number 3 is Oklahoma, and my number 4 is Ohio State.
Oh, Ohio State gets in there again, huh?
Mm-hmm. I think we're going to see a game in November where Michigan State and Ohio State come together, and it's decided again by an eyelash. And Michigan State will take that, go to the Big Ten championship game. They'll beat Wisconsin, who hadn't played anyone yet. They'll get in at number 2 with a goose egg in the loss column. And you look at an Ohio State team that the committee will look at and go, they played in the best conference, and they barely lost to the best team in the best conference. Throw them in. Kind of the same way that they put 2 teams in the SEC West in last year, 2 teams from the Big Ten East go this year.
Wow, so you're saying Ohio State's going to beat Michigan last game of the year? Wow, that's crazy. That's crazy. You changed up.
Hey, they only have like a 14-year track record of doing it.
Records are meant to be broken, Shea. We all know this.
All right, so given that, national champion time.
I'm going with Clemson. I can't go Michigan. I can't do it. As much as I would love to see that happen, Clemson is my team. They showed a lot of promise last year. They had, 2 losses or something like that. I just think Kelly Bryant, senior quarterback, he showed a lot of good things. He passes for 200 yards a game, and he runs almost for 100 every time on top of it. So I think their offense is just too potent to stop. So yeah, give me Clemson.
Much as I want to sit here and be a homer, I can't do it either. I can't respect myself and make that pick because I know that as much as I think it could happen, I'm doing it from a place of fandom. So instead, I'm going out on a limb a little bit. Kyler Murray is going to plant a flag at midfield where Baker Mayfield never could. Boomer sooner.
Wow. It's incredible.
Yeah.
Wow. That's all I got to say. The MLB Pro goes out and wins a national championship.
The Oakland A is going to go and win a national championship, and then he's going to take himself to Major League Baseball.
That dude needs to consider a career in football, man. I don't know. He might have to switch it up after he wins a national championship.
I'll tell you what, dude. Lincoln Riley, in his first season as head coach, took the Oklahoma Sooners to the college football playoff. I know Baker Mayfield had a lot to do with it, but he cut his teeth in a conference that is very difficult to win because they specialize in just playing offense. You basically have to score 55 points if you want to win a game in the Big 12. And he made a trip to the national championship game. I look at, or not the national championship, but he almost made it. I almost forgot that Georgia went and made the comeback. That was an incredible game. This is a guy who's been to the playoff. He's coming back now with a quarterback who everybody says is the real deal, and he's got a very talented team down there in Oklahoma. And I don't know. I like the guys in Norman to pull this out this year. Maybe I'm crazy.
You're probably crazy.
I might be.
That's probably the safe option.
I think we're both crazy for not picking Alabama. What are we, nuts?
we're probably both crazy in the national perspective for picking our home teams to be in the Final Four. So, I mean, there's that too.
In fairness, our home teams happen to be heavily favored to go to the Final Four by most national outlets. So I don't think it's that insane.
You know what they say too, Shea? Defenses win championships, and I know for a fact both Michigan and Michigan State have some of the best defenses in the nation, so it's not that crazy.
Maybe defenses do win championships, and there's two conferences in football that specialize in defense, the SEC and the Big Ten. Maybe we get two teams from each. The committee just goes, fuck the other conferences.
An SEC Big Ten tournament is what we're having here.
It's a power two. Yeah, it's like the what's the college basketball, the ACC Big Ten Challenge. It's like that, except the SEC Big Ten for football.
Yeah, I like it. Let's do it.
Hey, I'm down. Let's go. Michigan State, Ohio State, and Alabama, Georgia. Let's see what happens.
Okay, how are you going to just shade Michigan?
Sorry, man. Pit the two best divisions in football against each other. All right, let's make it 6 teams and throw LSU in there for some reason.
Quick note before we wrap this up. I want to say me and Shea did put down a $100 bet Michigan versus Michigan State this year. Just so you know, we won't be in the same room because there will be fists thrown at some point, more than likely. So that's good for us.
And if any listeners have any other ideas for things that the loser of that bet could do from like a humiliation standpoint, keep it PG-13, please. And you can go ahead and slide into my DMs. I don't know about Tanner's, but mine are open at Norling Shea on Twitter. Or just go ahead and hit the main account at Detroit Podcast. And if you have a little idea to spice up our bet, let us know.
Yeah, my DMs are open too, people. At Tanner Seltzer on Twitter. Hit me up.
Thanks for listening, folks, and be safe.